Good evening, everyone. Today's Dhamma talk is on a sutta that was given to the Deva and Brahma. The sutta is called Purāveda Sutta. In this sutta, they explain what are to be fulfilled before one's life ends. What are to be fulfilled before one finishes this life. This discourse was given to the Deva and Brahma, but these teachings are the teachings which all beings should practice. In this discourse, this is a conversation between the Buddha, which is called Nimitta Buddha. Buddha created a Nimitta Buddha in order to make a conversation like question and answer. Nimitta Buddha is the Buddha image that has been created by the Buddha to look like Buddha and talk like Buddha, so that the Nimitta Buddha and the actual Buddha would have this question and answer discussion about the Dhamma. In the Buddha's, the objective is that one Deva, in the mind of one Deva, there arises a question in the mind of the Deva. So the Deva, in his mind, was thinking, what should have been done before this body, this life come to decay? This thought arises in the mind of the Deva. And in order to answer this question in the Deva's mind, Buddha created this Nimitta Buddha to ask the question to the real Buddha. The question is, Kathandasi Kathansilo Upasantoti Uchati. Kathandasi means how one should have knowledge. Kathansila, how or what sila should one be endowed? Upasanto devotati, totally composed or at peace. So the question means, how should one have the knowledge and wisdom? How one should be fulfilled with sila to be called a person who is totally calm and totally at peace? The answer is Vitatano Purāveda, meaning before one's life ended, before this body comes to decay, before one's life ends, Vitatano, meaning one should be totally free from tasna craving. Upananda manesito, one should not be connected with the past. Vemache nupasankeyo, one must not be regarded, or one must not be in the list of beings who could be called as lustful person connected with the middle or the present. Tassa nati purakata, meaning one should not be longing for the future. This has been the first verse that the real Buddha had answered. So I will be explaining this first verse first. Even though there may not be time in this meditation retreat to discuss every verse, but we would be discussing on a few verses that has been answered. Each verse is very meaningful, and even one verse is very complete. The meaning is quite complete, that if we practice in order to reach this, the answer verse, it will be very ideal. In the answer, there explains that before the body decays, before one's life ends, one should be vitatano. One should be free from tasna craving. So that means before one's life ends, one should have become an arahat who is totally free from tasna craving. So do not be thinking this arahat is so far from us. Do not be thinking that way. But we have to practice in order to reach that goal. And as much as we practice, we could achieve being free from craving moment by moment by being mindful through this practice of Satipatthana meditation. If we don't practice at all, we will not reach the goal. So we have to start practicing moment by moment in order to be free from craving moment by moment until finally one reaches one final destination of becoming an arahat. In order to remove tasna craving, there involves the practice of Eightfold Noble Path. Eightfold Noble Path, in other words, the practice of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, to practice to remove craving. Sila, the practice of morality, can remove the transgressive craving that leads to wrongful action and wrongful physical and wrongful verbal action. In this way, by practicing Sila, one removes transgressive craving that manifests in body and speech. Samadhi practice, through the practice of Samadhi concentration, one can remove obsessive craving that can arise in the mind. But the practice of samadhi cannot uproot latent or dormant defilements. In order to remove latent dormant defilements that can arise whenever given the opportunity, in order to remove these latent dormant defilements, one should practice panya. And through the practice of panya, one can remove anusaya kilesa, latent dormant craving. This tanha craving, there are 6 types of tanha craving based on 6 objects. The tanha, the craving that craves on appearance, visible object, sound, smell, and then taste, touch, and thought. In this way, there are 6 kinds of craving that can arise. The craving that craves for appearances, for example, even the craving for appearances, there are many kinds. The craving, the attachment that is attached to one's own appearances, such as shape of one's body, one's hands, feet, as well as external appearances, such as craving or being attached in other person's appearance. Also, belongings such as clothes. One is attached to different kind of shape, different kind of colors such as white, yellow, red, and so on. So in this way, there are many kinds of craving that is on appearances, visible objects. So based on tanha craving, if one wants to get whatever one is craving, in order to get these things, if one doesn't keep morality, if one doesn't practice the precept, and in order to get what they want, one commits transgressive action. For example, in order to get what one wants, there might be killing. If one needs to get what he wants, she wants, there might be stealing, there might be lying, there might be sexual misconduct in order to get what they want. If the transgressive tanha has not been removed through the practice of sila, morality. By the practice of sila, one refrains oneself from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so on, so that through this practice of sila, the transgressive tanha, transgressive craving, has been removed through the practice of sila. But if one doesn't practice samadhi bhavana, there can still be tanha craving, obsessive craving that can arise in the mind if one doesn't practice samadhi bhavana. In the meditation retreat, yogis have taken the precepts so that the bodily behavior, verbal behavior are clean. Videkama Tanha, transgressive Tanha, has been removed through the practice of Sila. And through the practice of Satipatthana, yogis are removing the obsessive Tanha that can arise in the mind. By being mindful, Tanha craving cannot arise at the time one is being mindful. In order to be mindful, yogi applies effort in order to note the object. During the meditation practice, when noting the primary object, rising, falling, or sitting, touching, making the effort in order to note rising as soon as rising appears, making the effort in order to note falling as soon as falling arrives. It is Samma Vayama, right effort. And when one is noting, sitting, touching as the primary object, making effort in order to note sitting, making effort in order to note touching, it is Samma Vayama, right effort. Making effort to note rising, falling, this effort is Samma Vayama. And the mind, the noting mind, sticks to the object, rising, falling, or sitting, touching. As soon as rising arises, the noting mind sticks to the object, noting rising. As soon as the falling arises, the noting mind sticks to the object, falling. In this way, mindfulness sticks to the object that has been noted, and there is Samma Sati, right mindfulness. And when noting, sitting, touching, the mindfulness sticking onto the object, sitting, touching, it is Samma Sati, right mindfulness. When the yogi notes this primary object, making effort, noting every rising, falling, sitting, touching, the mindfulness is on the object, Samma Sati, right mindfulness, and the noting mind falls calm, collected on the object, which is Samma Samadhi, right concentration. So every time the yogi makes this effort to note the primary object, rising, falling, or sitting, touching, this Samma Vayama, right effort, the mindfulness sticking onto the object, Samma Sati, right mindfulness, the noting mind falling, calm, collected on the object, Samma Samadhi, right concentration. These three are called Samadhi Maganda, or the Samadhi Kanda, the group of Samadhi. So when these three are present, when noting the object, the thoughts about pleasurable objects cannot arise so long as they are Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi, noting on the object. So at that moment, pleasurable thoughts do not arise, and thus the Tanha cravings cannot arise at the moment one has this Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi in noting the object. Not only the primary object, rising, falling, or sitting, touching, but when other objects comes obvious, such as when feelings arises, when other feelings arises, whether it is the pleasant feeling, one has to make the effort to notice. Making the effort, viriya, being mindful, sati, being concentrated, samadhi, having these three on whatever object that arises, whether it is feeling or sensation, whether it is the thought, being mindful, applying effort, mindfulness, concentration. In this way, by being mindful of whatever object that arises at the present moment, so long as there is viriya, sati, samadhi in noting the object, dasana, craving, doesn't arise in the mind. In this way, one is removing dasana through the practice of samadhi. So one should pay attention in order to note the primary object as well as other secondary objects that are arising at the present moment. So long as there is viriya, sati, and samadhi, one will be able to note the object that is arising at the present moment. But at times, thoughts arise based on what one has experienced in the past. So if thoughts arise, be sure to note it right away. If thought arises, be sure to note thinking as soon as the thought arises. If yogi fails to note the thought as soon as thought arises, one might be carried away by the thoughts. And if these thoughts are pleasurable thoughts, dasana, craving arises, not being mindful of the thought. In order not to let it happen, as soon as the thought arises, do not go into detail what the thought is about. Just note it as thinking. If one notes the thought as thinking right away, the thought will not give rise to dasana, craving. That's why it is important to be mindful of the thought as soon as it arises, so that it doesn't lead to dasana, craving. And during the sitting meditation, at times, mental images might arise at times. And when mental images arise, do not go into detail what the mental image is. When mental image arises, as soon as it arises, just note it as seeing. So that there will not be dasana based on this mental image. And when one hears sound, just note hearing right away. And after noting hearing, go back to either rising, falling, or sitting, touching. And the same goes when during walking meditation, be mindful of the primary object, such as right, left, lifting, placing. In order to mindful of the step, make the effort, Samma Vayama. Be mindful of the step, lifting, so that the mindfulness will stick to the object, lifting. The noting mind will fall calm, collected on the object, lifting. In this way, so long as there is effort, mindfulness, and concentration, while noting, lifting, placing, lifting, moving, placing, as long as these three factors are present, dasana craving doesn't arise. At the moment, one is being mindful of the object, lifting, moving, placing. So in the Pura Veda Sutta, there says that before one's body decay, before the life ends, one should be vitatana, one should be free, one should be totally free from dhamma cravings. So in order to become totally free from craving, we and the yogis are practicing moment by moment, so that this dhamma craving is removed moment by moment. So yogis now are practicing sila, and thus yogis are removing transgressive cravings through the practice of sila. And as the yogi notes whatever object that arises, whatever object that is obvious at the present moment, by applying Samma Vayama, right effort, Samma Sati, right mindfulness, and Samma Samadhi, right concentration. At the moment, yogi is able to cultivate Viriya, Sati, and Samadhi in noting whatever object that is arising. Yogi is removing the obsessive craving that can arise if there is lack of samadhi. So in this way, yogi is removing obsessive craving moment by moment through this satipatthana practice. And in the next day, there will be explanation more how one should be free from dasana craving, as well as the other answer in this Pura Veda Sutta. This will be all for today. So may the yogi be able to apply Viriya, Sati, and Samadhi in order to remove this dasana craving momentarily, as well as remove the latent dormant defilement by cultivating knowledge through the Satipatthana practice.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.